I'm Brian Van, sportbiketrackgear.com, and today we're going to show you how to do the first service on a Yamaha YZF-R3 2015. This is our STG project bike. The oil light has come on, indicates it's time to change the oil on the motorcycle. That is one of the things you need to do at the first service. Chain tension will need to be adjusted, checked and adjusted. You want to address that. Tire pressure. You also want to make sure that if you haven't been maintaining your tire pressure especially, that you check and adjust your pressure at this time as well. We'll take a quick look at brake wear, front and rear, to make sure that everything's okay there and that we don't have any excessive wear going on. Take a look at the rotors, that kind of stuff. Very minor things. Okay, I don't expect any other problems. I think at the end of the day, it's going to be an oil change, a chain adjustment, tire pressure, and clean the motorcycle up. For our purpose today, I removed the fairings. It's going to be so you can see what I'm doing. Do you have to do that for your bike? No, you don't. You should be able to perform this whole procedure without taking the fairings off your motorcycle. A secondary reason I removed them is I want to take the opportunity to clean the engine and stuff up just a little bit. Right? Use a little brake cleaner, a little blowgun action to do that. There's a lot of ways to get that done. You can work on that yourself if you want to take the fairings off and clean it up. What am I going to use to do this? Let's cover supplies first. I like to use good oil, so we're going to use the 100% synthetic 300V from Motul. I've got 3 liters of it here. The capacity on this bike, I believe, is just over 2 liters, so we're going to need 3 liters to do that. For oil filter, I've chosen to go with Vortex. The guys at Vortex make good stuff, and the filter has a nut on the top of it, which is going to make the next oil change much easier. Additional supplies, Motul chain paste. This stuff is really handy. It works a lot better, in my opinion, than the spray-on stuff does. We're going to use that. Got a little bit of brake cleaner here. I've got rags to clean up. Tools. Very basic stuff. 12 mil wrench. It's going to cover our drain plug as well as part of the chain adjustment process. 17 mil wrench. That's going to be to tighten the Vortex oil filter. 19 and a 22 mil wrench. That will be to loosen the rear axle. Measuring the slack in the chain, I've got just a plain old steel rule. Some giant channel locks, or I should say mid-sized channel locks to deal with that stock oil filter. And then I have my handy-dandy Motion Pro air pressure gauge. I also have a chuck here that we'll use to fill the tires. So very, very basic tools. I'm going to start with the oil change. Okay, I think that's the most important part here. Before I take off the oil filter or the drain plug, one of the things I want to do is I want to make sure that we're cleaning any dirt or debris off before we wrench that off. So we're just going to get in here and just kind of spray away. You know, the bike's relatively clean and new, so this will pretty much get rid of any of the possible road grime. I'm going to do that around the actual oil fill plug itself. That's your filler plug there, and this is, of course, your sight glass over here. First thing we'll do is deal with the stock oil filter. Okay, the reason I'm using the mid-size pair of channel locks versus the large ones is you would not be able to use the large ones with the fairing on. They won't fit. Okay, so that's why I have mid-size out. For the filter, it is very important that if you're not going to use a proper filter wrench, these things can be on very tight from the factory. Okay, you want to make sure that you're grabbing it at the end where the filter is strong. Don't grab it in the middle and collapse the filter. Grab it here at the end, get a good bite on it, right? And then turn like so. If you grab this filter in the middle with a pair of channel locks like this and smash it and try and turn it off, I will promise you that if it's really tight, you are going to get yourself into a world of trouble with that, and you don't want that, okay? You could really create a project for yourself. Next up is going to be the drain plug. I'm going to start draining the oil now. I've already run the motor, so it's good and warm. You do not want to do this on a cold motor. When you take the drain plug out, make sure you still have the drain plug gasket in place. I am going to reuse that. Some riders and some mechanics feel that you need to replace these all the time. I would disagree with that. My experience with these has been that you can use these over and over again. If you're going to do this yourself, I want you to do what feels comfortable for you. Additionally, when you're done with this, we're going to double check for leaks before we ride the motorcycle. We'll finish with the oil filter. Make sure you dispose of the oil properly as well as the oil filter. You do not throw this in your garbage. You do not dump the oil behind your house. To help the oil drain more completely, I will also remove the oil fill plug from the bike. This allows the air to flow in the top. It just allows it to drain more completely. Let this run until you have a slow and steady drip before you put on your oil filter or your drain plug. Okay, oil is to the point now where it's basically just very slowly dripping, so we're pretty much good to go here. So we're going to get ready to button things up down below and then refill the oil. One of the things I like to do is I like to fill the oil filter before I install it. All right, gets the paper in there saturated, the filter element saturated with oil, which is good. And that way we have less time the motor runs without oil pressure. Okay, so this is just going to speed up the process. Even though this filter is hung vertically and not horizontally, right, I know I'm going to lose some of the oil that's in the filter when I spin it on, and that's okay because you'd be surprised how little you really do lose. This is a step that you should take even though you are going to spill a little bit. So you keep your drain pan here still in position. And while I'm getting the drain plug ready and I'm cleaning the filter base, I'll just kind of let this thing soak. And they actually hold a fair amount of oil. I'll have just a little bit lubricating the gasket itself. We're going to spray this off with brake clean after I put the filter on because it's definitely going to make a little bit of a mess. Okay, now we're going to install the filter. Like I said earlier, don't freak out. You're going to lose a little bit of oil. Just get it up there, get it run down, and get it snugged out. This filter is pre-drilled for safety wire. Pretty much any of the ones that have the nut on the end are that way. Now would not be a bad time to do that if you have the things it takes to do it. You could also do the the drain plug at the same time. I'm going to clean this off with a little brake clean. I'll repeat this from the other side as well. Okay, since we brought up the whole safety wire point, and really at the end of the day, the right thing to do is to do it, we're going to go ahead and do it to the R3. I'm going to show you exactly what I would do to set this bike up so it accepts safety wire for the drain plug as well as the filter. There's a nice little boss right here on the side of the oil pan, okay, that's not used for anything. I'm going to begin by drilling through that. This will be the attachment point for the safety wire. It'll drill through pretty easily, as that is just an aluminum pan. The drain plug itself is going to require a little more patience. Like I said, we're easily through that, so now we've got a good base here to work from and attach each piece of safety wire. Now, we'll use our center punch, and we're going to drill through the drain plug. You can do this stuff in a vise. Personally, I've always preferred doing it on the motorcycle itself. The goal is going to be catching it here and passing it through just a part of the drain plug. Drilling all the way through, albeit not a bad idea, takes a really long time, and truthfully, it's not necessary. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to center punch here, and I'll begin the hole kind of straight on, okay, because obviously at an angle, there's no way it's going to start properly at an angle. As I get the hole started, I will then work the drill bit so that it passes through in an angle. And I like where I'm at now. And we'll just go ahead and proceed through the side of the drain plug. When we come back, we'll be doing the actual safety wire. Take your safety wire. We're going to begin with the oil filter. Stretch it back, get an idea of where I need to twist it to. Clamp your safety wire pliers on this. We have all this stuff available on the site, right? You know, this is kind of, you know, for street riding, some might look at it and be like, oh, this is absolutely unnecessary. Well, for a street bike, you probably change your oil far less frequently than a track rider will. And I gotta tell you, you lose your oil, okay? A couple of things are gonna happen. One, it's probably gonna get all over your tires, you're gonna crash. No fun. Two, if you're riding on the racetrack, right, you're gonna oil up the track surface and nobody will like you ever again that was at the track that day. So you'll lose friends. The other thing that can happen, if you don't catch that oil light right away, you might lose your motor. That's probably worse than losing your friends. Okay, oil filter is secured. We'll repeat the process here for the drain plug, and you saw how I did that very clearly. Trim away your excess. Feed this through. And what I like to do is, you know, it's like when you're tying a shoe, try and get both laces pretty even here to start. Okay, you want to do a nice clean job with anything that you do. Start twisting back here. All this is there for is just to hedge your bet, you know, and that way if something happened and this stuff starts to loosen up, it just can't come out. And that is pretty important. Okay, pull that through. And then grab it over here. And we'll twist it tight. When we come back, we're going to begin filling the oil. Wire's done. Let's go ahead and get our filler back off. This is something I like to take a rag and wipe that. There's always going to be a little road grime on the edges. I get that stuff off of there. Sealing surface for that, you'll clean that as well. Another thing that's not a bad idea to safety wire is this. You know, probably less important than the drain plug and the oil filter. Motul 300V comes with a built-in funnel. You'll notice I took the rear stand off the motorcycle because I need the bike to sit level now. If it's sitting up higher in the rear, I'm going to get an inaccurate reading right in that sight glass. The research I did, this bike was going to be a little over 2 liters. I've got 3-liter bottles here. I'm going to start at 2. And then we'll recheck and go from there. Run the bike, let the oil settle, very important things. Okay, I've got the 2 quarts in the bike. Remember, we put some of the first quart into the filter, the rest of it in the bike, and then 1 liter The sight glass is definitely high enough now that I'm comfortable starting the bike. When you first start the bike, the oil light is going to stay on for a second. It's okay. You're not going to do any damage. Don't rev it. Just let it idle. The oil light will go out all by itself. It'll take just a second. Okay, we're going to let the bike settle now, okay, and work on the chain tension for the motorcycle next. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lightly clean the chain. You could get a grunge brush for this. We sell a ton of those things, a chain brush. It really allows you to clean all the stuff off this chain. That's great. This bike, you know, we've got 700 miles on it, okay? It's really not that dirty. So what I like to do, I've got an old towel sitting out here, right? And I'm going to hit it with just a little bit of brake clean on the surface of this. I'm going to grab the chain like so and roll the chain around, roll the back wheel, right? And just allow the solvent to help remove some of the grime and dirt that is actually on the chain. And you'll see that it really was not very dirty at the end of the day. You don't want to take and spray the whole chain down with brake cleaner. That's not a good idea. The solvent's pretty tough on things, right? But to give a chain a light cleaning like that, not a problem. As you put more miles on the motorcycle, you definitely want to invest in a nice, like a grunge brush or something. Keeps your chain clean. You get all the road debris and grime out of there, right? The grit. They can wear it out prematurely. But for a bike this new, this first service, really not necessary. Okay, now we're going to take a quick chain measurement. You know, just looking at it right now, you know, I would say the chain is definitely a little bit to the loose side. I can push it up all the way up against the bottom of the swing arm. I do tend to run closer to the loose end of the scale than the tight end. The spec on this is 35 to 45 millimeters. How do you measure it? You want to try and locate the center point, okay? Center point, yeah, we're going to be right about here, okay? Decide where am I measuring from and stay consistent with it. Are you going to measure from this point on the chain or this point? Okay, and make sure there's no flip-flopping once you pick one. I'm going to measure from this point right here in the center, the bottom portion. I've got my steel ruler. I'm going to give it a light pull down, about 65 millimeters there. Pushing up. It goes over. It goes inside the 20, so we are over 45 millimeters. I suspect that the chain was a little bit loose, brand new bike, so what do we do to tighten it? Notice I have the bike up on a rear stand, supported. We need to first loosen the axle. 19 millimeter wrench on the clutch side, brake side 22. We're going to loosen the rear axle enough so that we're able to use the chain adjusters that are built in to the stock swing arm and adjust our chain back. Next, we need to loosen the chain adjusters up. We're going to start with the jam nut. Take the first 12 millimeter wrench, hold the inside nut. Take the second wrench and use that to loosen the jam nut itself while holding the adjuster in the same spot it was. We want to try and do each side as evenly as possible. I'm going to go over to the other side, repeat the process here. Loosen the jam nut. We're going to keep the adjuster nut in the same position. Additionally, there are adjustment marks on the chain adjuster inside the swing arm. We are going to use those as points of reference while we do this. You can also use a chain measurement, chain alignment tool that would be beneficial and helpful. I need to pull the rear axle back a little bit. not a lot. So we're going to go, let's call it about a quarter turn on each adjuster. I want to keep it as even as I can. And then we'll come over for a quick remeasure. You want to make sure, you can see how I'm kind of smacking the wheel, that you have the chain adjusters pushed and the axle pushed tightly against the back of the swing arm. If you don't, you're going to get an inaccurate measurement. So we're going to come back to essentially the same spot, give it a tug down at about 58, push up, and I am at about 22. So that is going to put us at about 36. So that, I think, is going to be a pretty decent spot. 58, 22, push a little harder, it might even look more like about a 21. So I'd say that's a good spot right there. Now what I want to do is I want to take a good look at the adjuster marks and where they are in relation to the very back of the swing arm, and try and keep those as even as possible. So we are 1, 2, 3, we're on the 4th mark, and probably about 4 1/3. So let's go to the other side, let's see what I've got there. And that looks pretty darn even, so we're going to go ahead and roll with that and tighten up our rear axle. Okay, now I'm going to show you what I like to do when I tighten up the rear axle. I take one of those 12 mil wrenches, okay, and before I tighten the adjusters, I'm going to go ahead and tighten the axle. We will also recheck the alignment and make sure we're good to go, okay, once we're done with all of this. I got the wrench in there. It's adding extra tension between the chain and the sprocket, so you can't roll it around. It pushes the axle tight against the axle blocks or the chain adjusters, okay? So as I'm doing that, I'm going to snug the axle. I'm on the axle nut on the right side of the bike, brake side. This is another spot where you can use torque wrenches. If you're more comfortable doing that, the specs are all available online, easy to find. Okay. Now, first thing you can do is you can use those marks that are provided from the factory. A lot of people question the accuracy of those, okay? There are tools, very simple tools available, like you see here from Bike Master, okay? They have a very simple tool that you would slide over your sprocket. You go ahead and snug it up. Some bikes you might need to pull your chain guard. Go ahead and snug that bad boy up. And you want to line up the pin with the alignment mark, and then what you're going to do is you literally come in here and you sight that right down the chain. Flashlight would not be bad. It's going to be dark. What you're seeing there on the camera, it's going to be hard for you to really see. And peel the chain guard away a little bit, and you can look down and see that chain is really straight right now. So that's one way to do it. This tool, I think, is $10 or $15, super cheap, right? So you can use that as part of your maintenance schedule. The other thing I've seen folks do, you know, they might measure this and try and compare either side, or measure back here. Honestly, you're relying on a lot of tolerances being perfectly even. Something like this little tool is probably going to be more accurate than any of that would ever be. Now, we'll go ahead and take the tool off. We're good to go. We're all tight. Make sure I get my chain guard back in position after I moved it around like that. And then I'm going to show you how I'm going to lube the chain. Don't forget also to tighten up your jam nuts back here. All right, that's a very important step you don't want to overlook. Hold the adjuster and tighten the jam nut while you're holding the adjuster in the other direction. Okay, we've got our this is a really cool product from Motul. It's chain paste, okay? It's got a brush, it's actual paste. This stuff is really super cool. You kind of get it flowing through the brush a little bit. This is very low fling, okay, which is something that I think all of us can appreciate. You only need to put X amount on the chain. You know, you kind of get it going, right? Get the chain rolling. You need to make sure that you're doing this from the sprocket, the area, this side of the chain where it's going to be contacting the sprockets. Okay, if you just rub it on the back right here, that really isn't going to do you a whole lot of good because that is going to be right on the opposite side. A little bit of lubrication here is good, but really where it's contacting the sprocket is what you want. You only need a light film, okay? You don't need to turn the entire chain white. So I'm putting a little bit of pressure on it, I'm rolling it, and then to finish off, I'll come back here and just put a light coating back here. You want to try and get the chain to roll around a couple times, right? Nothing really out of the ordinary. It's all about just having a light film on it. Roll that around a couple times, wipe off any excess, and you're good to go. Okay, tire pressure. We're going to go with, it recommends 2936, and we're going to go with a little less than that. I actually like what I have there. I've got about 32. It softens up the ride a little bit. Okay, I've got a lot of bumps around here. So you can use your tire pressure as an active part of your suspension, okay? You don't want to go grossly low, but a few pounds here and there, 2, 3, 4 pounds, you can use that as kind of a suspension tuning component. If you're going to load the bike really heavy, let's say you're going to take a passenger on the motorcycle and you're going to take a reasonable trip, you're going to want to keep your tire pressures more towards the upper end or the maximum on the scale. Front of the bike, they recommend 29. We're at about 31 right now. Go ahead and bleed some of that off. Right at 29. That part is good to go. We'll take the bike off the rear stand. I want to check the oil level and see where we're at. Okay, checking the oil. Off the rear stand, it's settled for plenty of time now. You can see this is right between the safe, the low and maximum safe operating zone. So it's right in there right now. And honestly, you know, that could have been, I might have been fine with the 2 quarts if I wouldn't have lost some of the oil when I was putting the filter on. No worries though. Having a little extra oil around is never a bad idea. So with this bike, you can order 3 liters and have everything you need, no problem, because I'm going to put just a tickle to bring this thing up to that upper end of the operating range. In theory, you could even go like that and be just fine. So we're talking literally just a couple of ounces here, if that. And you can see that there has drawn us very close to the maximum, and we're going to stick with that. Honestly, I think the factory oil level was even higher than that. So we'll wipe everything off here, put on our oil filler cap, we're going to reset our oil life index, and we're good to go. Okay, when you change the oil, you need to make sure that you're resetting that oil light. You see mine is flashing, it needs to be reset now. We're at 742 miles is how far we went on the stock. So we're going to go ahead and scroll through until we see the trip and the oil light. We're going to hold reset until both are flashing. Let go, hit it again. ahead and turn it off. There's our odometer. There's our trip. And there is the function where you would reset the oil life indicator. To recap, you scroll through till you see oil and trip. Press and hold reset until they start flashing. Release, press and hold again. And that will reset when you're holding it. When it stops flashing, it is reset. And now we'll scroll over to the odometer, and you're good to go. We're almost done. There's two things we need to do. Thing one is, I want to take a look at the brake pad wear and just see if there's anything really out of the ordinary. What do you have to do that? Flashlight. For the back, I'm going to look through between the caliper. I can see both pads. I can see the rotor. There is plenty of thickness there. There is nothing to worry about. Okay. Another indicator of brake wear would be brake fluid level. You can see that the reservoir is full completely, right where we left it basically when we did the rear line. So when the pads wear excessively, you'll see your fluid level goes low. So if you see low fluid, that's an indicator that you might have pad wear or a leak. For the front, same thing. I'm going to kind of look through the edge of the caliper here, see the rotor. Both pads look great. Sight glass here for the fluid, totally full, good to go. The single most important thing that we're going to do now, before we ride this motorcycle, we need to run it, let it run for a while, shut it off, let it sit, and check for leaks. If you have any leaks with any of the work you did, do not ride the motorcycle. Correct that, then ride the bike. If you followed all the steps correctly, you inspected the gasket or replaced the gasket on the drain plug, did a good job installing the filter, you're going to be good to go. But still, never trust it. Always check it before you ride the bike. If you're not comfortable doing anything you've seen here, because remember, this isn't a service manual. This is just how I do it on my bike. If you're not comfortable doing it, take it to your local Yamaha dealer. They'll do a great job for you on it. It'll just cost you a few bucks. This is our first service on our 2015 Yamaha YZF-R3. I'm Brian Van, Sport Bike Track here.